Hi, this week we're going to be talking about nitazene and carfentanil. These are designer drugs that are on the market. It's out there on the street, actually, not even, I should say, out in the market where people can buy them. Um, a lot of times people are buying what they think is Xanax and other pain medication to self-medicate, or maybe they're having some type of pain, and we are seeing new drugs mixed in. A lot of times we're talking about fentanyl. You hear a lot about that in the news, and now we have something more to worry about because now there's carfentanil and nitazene. So we're going to be talking about that today. S- So, our topic this morning is about a drug that's rarely talked about. It's carfentanil. And what carfentanil is, it's 100 times more potent than fentanyl. And for some reason, we don't hear about that in the news. It's been known to be around about 2018 or so, and the Drug Enforcement Agency was aware of it and knew that it was coming through, but it's a rare uh, drug because it is actually an animal tranquilizer used for large elephants, large animals, bears, elephants, and large animals. And usually agencies like Fish and Game might have carfentanil. And this is the comparison of what carfentanil looks like. On the left, you see fentanyl, and then on the right, you see carfentanil, and it's 100 times more potent than fentanyl. It's pretty scary because if zero point 0.2 grams of carfentanil, um, zero point 0.2 grams of fentanyl is enough to kill you, you can have the same amount and it's going to kill 100 times more people. So be aware of that. And that's what we're talking about this morning. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because carfentanil is very rare. And we know that there have been rare occurrences where there was a football player that was affected in Texas and he died of carfentanil poisoning. And what happened was the father made a good point. He said, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why don't we know about it? And that's a good question. That's a good question. Um, it's not talked about enough. Fentanyl. Um, we started talking about fentanyl because it was occurring on a daily basis, and people were seeing a lot of what they call overdoses in the hospitals, and people were actually dying of this deadly poison. So fentanyl was very prominent, and it was brought out in the news. At first, it was called overdoses, and of course, we're calling them poisonings because it's manufactured on the street. There is a medical grade of fentanyl that is safe in a medical setting, that is given to you by a doctor, and of course you're monitored during surgery or something like that. Then you have the transdermal patches that go on your arm, and those are safe as long as you don't take them off and mess with them. And we know that later on that those transdermal patches were being abused. So carfentanil came rolling around, and it wasn't talked about because maybe they didn't think it was going to trend into a drug, but it did. And this drug was one that killed my son on November 26, 2021. When his autopsy report came out and said carfentanil, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I had to ask around. I had to Google it and figure it out. When I learned that it was 100 times more potent than fentanyl, I was floored because nobody was talking about it. So a lot of times I will go to rallies and I'll have my son sign and it will say killed by carfentanil and fentanyl. And it does pose a discussion because a lot of people that and other parents that they lost their kids with fentanyl, they would ask me, what is carfentanil? What is that? And so it was open to discussion. And what I think is great about the whole thing is the simple fact that I was bringing awareness to carfentanil the best I could. Um, and I just hope that nobody, I just hope that they could get it off the street. I just hope that they can get fentanyl off the street. And I think the only way to do it is to give stiff sentences to people that kill people with fentanyl. So, like I said, it's 100 times more potent, and what they do is they'll take the carfentanil and they will cut it into, just like fentanyl, they'll cut it into Xanax. Press they'll press the fake pill. Some of it is 100% fentanyl, and it looks just like a Xanax, so that it's colored like a Xanax. They match the colors of the M30s. They match the color of Percocets. So you don't even know that it's not a real Percocet or a real Xanax, a real whatever drug it is that you're asking for. It could be pressed into an aspirin. Now, if you get carfentanil in there, you're certainly going to die. You're certainly going to die from it. And the reason why I'm bringing it up this morning is because a lot of people are not aware of carfentanil and what's called nitazene. We'll talk about that later. Carfentanil needs additional testing when someone passes away from fentanyl and carfentanil. A lot of times they will have fentanyl in their system and their testing will pick up the fentanyl. And then that death will be deemed as a fentanyl, what they call overdose. It's actually a poisoning, but the coroner's office, they're not looking at it like that yet. It's our job to change the narrative on how these drugs are classified in the news. They were called overdoses when people were found unresponsive. Some people have died. They were called overdoses, and we know now that fentanyl is illegal to possess, it's illegal to sell. And these are actually poisonings because it's manufactured in labs by chemists that don't know what they're doing. They're just mixing things up and what they call a bad batch. I don't think there's any good batch of fentanyl. There's no good batch of fentanyl, but sometimes you'll get one that's more deadly and it'll get out there. And that's where you see 3 and 4 people dying in the same areas of Sacramento, of any state, of any county. Those are deemed as bad batches. But like I said, there's no good batch of fentanyl. It's horrid. Some people are surviving. Some people are asking for it because they are now hooked on it. It's introduced into their drug of choice, so they'll keep coming back. And that's why dealers do this, so they can get repeat customers. That the addiction is so strong of fentanyl that there are a lot of rehab facilities. They do not know how to treat fentanyl. It's the new kid on the block, and it is so strong that they're trying to figure out the best way to treat people who are addicted to it. Carfentanil is out there. It's rare, like I said, and you won't know until it's too late. It does respond to Narcan. It takes a lot more Narcan to get somebody back, but most certainly it's strong enough to kill a person. My son had an IV drip, and because he had 87 grams of carfentanil in his system, there was no bringing him back, even with the Narcan drip. So please be aware out there of what's going on, and talk to your children about not taking any candies, or and I say start at 9, because if you start them training them not to take anything from anybody or eat candies or share candies with people, with kids in the school, they will know by the time they're 13, when they start learning about drugs. Hopefully they learn not to take anything from anybody. Carfentanil can be pressed into gummies. It can be mixed into gummies. It can be pressed into vitamins. We've seen vitamins. They look like Flintstone vitamins, little dinosaurs. Fentanyl is pressed into it as well. And people think that they're safe because they look like vitamins. And people think that it's safe because they look like gummies. Um, there's nothing out there that can be experimented with anymore, drug wise. And peer pressure is everything. And I'll say that because us as parents, we are not around our children when they go through this peer pressure. It could be a friend, just say, hey, I got this. Let's share these, or hey, take one of these, it'll make you feel better. Oh, it just made me feel really cool, and they'll do it. And we have to talk to our children about not being bullied into taking anything, not to be talked into taking anything, and just say, no, I'm good. um you can have it. And that's the best remedy, is to train our children early not to eat things from other people. And so we know the dealers are out there. They're trying to target the kids younger and younger. We saw 4 10-year-olds, it was in the news, 4 10-year-olds, and you can Google it. 4 10-year-olds got sick after eating gummies. And when they were brought to the hospital, they suspected something was going on. They were talking about gummies. They were tested for fentanyl, and come to find out, they had fentanyl in their system. So I'm sure they, went back to see where these gummies came from. Somebody's in trouble. I mean, targeting kids is not okay. So our dealers, at least in Sacramento, are getting younger and younger. And the reason why they're getting younger and younger, because the dealers that are used to dealing, the adults, they know that the younger kids do not get sentenced like adults. So think about that for a minute. You can have another teen targeting your child um, through peer pressure or whatever, and they're getting paid to do it. So they think that's good money. They're going to do it because they get paid to do it, and they don't know. They don't have the knowledge of an adult to know that it's the wrong thing to do. I talk to parents all the time because of my loss, and I don't want any parent to go through what I went through when I lost my child. When I say child, it doesn't matter how old our kids are, they're still our children. My son was 25 years old, but he had autism, and he was on the spectrum, and he could be influenced, which is one of the reasons why I had conservatorship, because I was afraid that he would be influenced by somebody that could take advantage of him. And his niceness is, he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he would give his last $5 if he had it to somebody that needed it. And that niceness, and his naiveness is what I believe got him killed, because the people out there um, that are targeting these kids, they don't care. They see the vulnerability, they don't care. They just want the money. And I know, Miss Peggy, it's bad that this had happened. And I just tell people that if your child has anxiety or depression, please get them into therapy as children. If they feel different, let them know it's okay to be different. It's okay to say no. And usually through therapy, if they're on the spectrum, therapy is the only way to resolve the issue. It's a diagnosis that they are given, and they will learn how to cope with the anxiety of not saying no, how to say no to people, what true friends are. They're going to, people learn that. Some people have to learn that because they think everybody's their friend. My son ran into a lot of people, and just because he knew their first name, they were his friend. So I tell parents, if you don't know who their friends are, ask. If they have a last name, just educate your kids that if you don't know their last name, they're not your true friend. And even if they're your true friend, do not take anything from anybody, because your true friend may not know where they're getting the gummies or pills, where they come from, and the dangers of it. They may not know the dangers of it. So kids will be kids, and we have to remember that. I was talking to a parent, it was last week, and her comment to me was, well, I don't do drugs, and my child's not exposed to that, not in this household. And I reminded her that you don't have to do drugs to um, have your child experiment with drugs. You do not have to be any type of addict. You don't have to have pills in your house. Um, and I educated her on what peer pressure does to children, and that they can be exposed. And I gave her the story about the 10-year-olds that were poisoned with gummies. And the light turned on for her, and she realized what I was saying. And she always thought that people that were dying of fentanyl poisoning was a product because their parents exposed them to drugs. And that is not true. That's further from the truth. They may have an injury in high school and can't cope with it, and will ask, hey, does anybody have anything for pain? It's just that simple. As a mom, I've been around a lot of other moms. We experience headaches, we experience different types of stress in our neck, and we will turn to our friend and say, hey, do you have something for a headache? We have to educate ourselves not to do that. If we're going to tell our kids not to ask anybody for anything or take anything from anybody, we as parents have to practice the same thing. Please do not take any Tylenol. What you think may be Tylenol, it may not be Tylenol, and it may be Tylenol. Don't take anything from anybody as an adult, because we have to teach our children those things. And we have to teach our adult children, especially, because they'll go out to a club, they will have their drinks, and a headache might come on, and they may ask somebody for an aspirin or, "Hey, do you have something for a headache?" It's that simple. And fentanyl will take you pretty quickly. It'll take you pretty quickly, and, I just think that we can't say it enough, that if you have a headache, just write it out, come home, or go to the store and get your own medication. Um, and, like Miss Peggy said, there's people pressing pills to look like candy. It's called rainbow fentanyl. It comes in different colors. It looks very pretty. It looks very enticing, especially for young kids. Another thing that I will say is that you also have to be careful, and this is parents too. Please be careful when you go to a picnic, when you go to a bar, when you're at a restaurant and you walk away from your food and you don't have anybody watching your food. If you walk away and come back, don't eat it, don't drink, get another dish, um, get another drink, because there have been a few people that have been poisoned in their food as a prank. And the people who pulled the prank did not know that it was going to kill the person, and it'll kill you within a couple minutes. You're gone. And a lot of times at picnics, nobody carries Narcan. And we'll talk about the importance of carrying Narcan and carrying enough Narcan so that you can save a life. Um, Narcan is strong. It takes the opioids out of your system, but it depends on how much you have in your system. And all of the Narcan, it has instructions right there on the box. Be familiar with how to use Narcan. There's Narcan training. You don't really need to be trained to do a nasal spray on somebody, but the intervals are important. And read the instructions, because all of the Narcan boxes come with instructions, and have enough of it so that you can save a life. Um, Another thing to be aware of is, we know in a lot of states there's child trafficking, and they will use drugs to drug a person, save them. We'll take them to the hospital. I'll take them to the hospital. And everyone's like, oh, good, they're going to the hospital, and not realizing that especially children or young adult can be trafficked. That's just the nature of the world we live in. It's sad to say, and I don't want to scare people, but the reality is that's what happens. Um, I was always afraid, because my son was vulnerable, that he would be trafficked. I would have never thought in a million years, because I would tell him, don't stop at any cars, don't talk to strangers. I would talk to him about um, just being careful. Not everyone's your friend. Um, and I just think that, when I think about all the things that I told him about, if somebody grabs you, or run and stuff like that, I didn't have fentanyl on my radar. I didn't have carfentanil on my radar for sure. I didn't even know what it was. I was always worried about, and parents should worry about all these things. And that's why fentanyl awareness is all over the place. You see people with signs, you see people handing out Narcan, you see events, you see pop-up events talking about fentanyl, because it's there. It's there. And they mail it free to your home. If you are in the county, most counties will mail it to you if you ask for it. Just let them know you're bringing awareness to the community, and you will have a nice stock to give out to people. Please keep some for yourself. Keep it in the car. Keep some in your bag. Most guys out there, you don't carry purses like we do, but you can carry Narcan, where you can get to it pretty quickly. So, yeah, that's the dangers, and that's what we're facing. Rainbow fentanyl, they're bringing it over the borders in different ways. I was reading an article where they were bringing it and hollowing out avocados and packing them, reclosing the avocados and sending them through. And I was shocked to learn that. It is something that I know that they're desperate to get it over here. They're desperate to, I, they're just, to me, they're trying to target and basically ruin America. They're ruining America. Look at our generations, the generations that we won't be able to see as parents. We have our children that didn't have the chance to have children. So they're not the only victims. Um, us parents are victimized by the loss of our child. We're victimized by the person that poisoned our child, because we just can't navigate every day, with a smile on our face, knowing that, this should never happen. The police and the sheriff need to be more stringent on tightening down when they find a victim of fentanyl, securing their cell phone. They need to secure whatever evidence that they have so that they can find out who's responsible. And I will tell you that the cell phone is the new DNA when it comes to fentanyl and fentanyl poisoning. The first thing that I did was get into my son's phone. He's pretty concrete. I was able to guess his password. And I am I was appalled at what I found in his cell phone. I was trying to get it over to investigations, and investigations basically said it was an overdose, and I knew otherwise. This was homicide, and I think every poisoning should be treated as a crime, to rule out homicide or something of that nature that's done on purpose to somebody. They need to go a little bit further and find out where it's coming from. It's not hard. Even the homeless people have cell phones, and they need to secure and find out where they got their fentanyl from. It's illegal to own, possess, sell, be on your person. It's illegal, and it's already in the law books, and it needs to be enforced. And I was surprised how many times this drug was called an overdose by so many victims out there, and not investigated. Almost every mother that I talked to said there was no investigation. They said it was an overdose, and they left it at that. Well, the great thing that I learned and that I share with people is that homicide has no statute of limitation. And if you find out through your son's or daughter's cell phone or loved one, it could be a niece, it could be a grandchild, if you find out that where this fentanyl came from through your own investigation, then I would definitely call the police and ask for a case number. and tell them why you need a case number. It's so important. Um, we are in a new era of drugs. We're in a new era of everything. And when COVID hit, it made people's anxiety worse. We saw a lot of deaths during that time. It peaked high at 2021. It continued to peak in 2022 when counties are saying that their drug deaths have gone down. We see it increasing. There are people that I know that are nurses and doctors that say that they see 5 and 6 cases a day, and that's just in one hospital. And I can tell you that it's underreported because it doesn't look good politically to have that many deaths and no control over it. All these deaths can be controlled by investigations, giving stiff sentences for people that kill with fentanyl, and at the very least, it would be a deterrent. If people got stiff sentences, they would think 2 and 3 times before they decide to peddle it to somebody. And I truly believe that that would make a difference. And a lot of people will go to their district attorney and complain about it or try to open up a case with the district attorney. A lot of district attorneys will not open a case unless they get it from the police department. The police need to do their utmost to bring justice to the victim and the victim's family so that they can get answers and get some closure. In my case, I was forced to investigate my own son's death, and that's double traumatizing. Not only did I lose my son, I had to investigate what happened to him. I had to ask around. I had to knock on doors. I had to retrieve my son's Cash App card from those who had it. And it was appalling to me that I had to do this because that's not my job, so to speak. It's always my job as a mom to do whatever I need to do, but it's also the police department's job or the sheriff's department's job to do an investigation more thoroughly than I do. They know how to question people, they know how to bring people in, they know how to get information, whatever they need through cell phones, and they just know what they're doing. I didn't know what I was doing as a parent. I was just out there frantic trying to figure out what happened to my son. And I did find the answers. I did go back and say, here is some evidence. And I would not stop until I was screaming from the mountaintops that this needs to be investigated. Why do I have all this evidence and nobody's paying attention to it? People are injecting xylazine. They are using xylazine, or xylazine is mixed into their drug of choice, and there needs to be a high alert on xylazine. Xylazine does not work with Narcan. It's not effective. And people get so hooked on it, they start shooting it up, and you'll see people with flesh wounds, and it eats up flesh, and it destroys the organs faster than anything you can imagine. Be aware that that is out there. It's becoming more common than we want. Carfentanil is being more common than we want. Still in Sacramento, there are just a handful of cases of carfentanil. it's not prominent. I hope that it doesn't become prominent. My job is to bring awareness out there so that everyone is aware of fentanyl and carfentanil, xylazine, nitazene. We're going to talk about that later and what it is. All these new drugs, it's appalling, and more needs to be done. Legislators are dragging their feet. They can't seem to come to any consensus as to how to tackle this situation. And it's strange to me that everyone is steering away from incarcerating those that kill people with fentanyl. And let's face it, murder is murder, homicide is homicide. It's just like having a pill with a 6-inch knife in it and you take it and they're dead. Um, these pills are the new bullets. And a lot of parents don't think of it that way, but I do, because the result is the same: death by at the hands of another person, death by another person. And I think that it needs to be treated as such. It needs to be investigated as such. And no, nobody should be immune to a slap on the wrist when they kill somebody. If you kill more than 4 people, by the state's definition, you're a serial killer. If you kill more than 4 people. Well, we've got a lot of serial killers out there. And I hate to say it like that, but that's the reality of it. A lot of people are dying by one person or multiple people at a time. So be aware, out there. And there are a lot of people who are frustrated because they'll come to me and say the police did nothing to help me. And my job, I feel that my new mission is to help parents, not only through the grieving process, but to show them how to restart their investigation, since there's no statute of limitation on homicide, and how to do it the right way. I did it the wrong way, then I learned the right way, and then I had to keep pushing the right way. My son's death is, it's never going to go silent. His memory's never going to go silent. His name is never going to go silent, because he didn't deserve all this. And I want to take time out to thank DJB Lethal and LLR Radio in Ohio for giving me this platform to talk to you about topics that are very difficult to talk about, because they are doing a lot in the community. There's Ram Tattoo, that's at 224 West Johnson Street in Upper Sandusky in Ohio. If you're looking for a tattoo in that area, go and get a tattoo of your choice. He does great work. So I do want to take the time to be thankful for this platform, and to be able to talk to parents about what's out there, what's lurking in your um, child's school day. A lot of parents talk to their kids, they have a discussion with their kids, and 2 hours later, there something happened and their kid's not responsive. It happens way more often than I can even talk about. It's rampant. And I'm just talking about in my small area where I live. And this is going on across the United States, from California to Florida. Every single state is being affected by fentanyl. Every single community I don't know anybody that doesn't know of somebody that has died of fentanyl, or fentanyl has affected somebody's family. We hear it on the news. We see it. We don't think that it could ever happen to us. And just when you think that, you get blindsided. I was totally blindsided by this, let alone a lot of people don't want to say anything because they discover that whoever gave it to their child, they know that person, so they sweep it under the rug. Please do not do that, because it sends the wrong message to the community. Hopefully the person doesn't do it again. Um, Sometimes lessons learned is to be able to sit down and reflect on what you did by consequences. If they're a teen, maybe they need to sit down for a minute and, think about the consequences and get education within the juvenile system about drugs and the effect that it has on people, and how to live a lifestyle where you're not manipulated by a pill. And it doesn't always have to be a pill. In Sacramento, they have a lot of programs out there, and they call it "One Pill Can Kill." And a lot of you, I will tell you, it wasn't one pill. It Sometimes it is. So that message is important. It is important. We need to talk about that as well. One single pill can kill you, but sometimes it's given to people in different forms. You may not be looking for a pill. You may be looking for candy. You may be looking for a Flintstone vitamin. Your kid might be enticed by a Jamba Juice drink that somebody bought them. Um, it's not always one pill. And that's important to know as well. And there are a lot of pioneer moms out there that are talking about this. They're talking about what happened to their child. That's important to ask for justice. Do not be afraid to ask for justice. If you aren't sure what to do, you can always find me on Facebook under my name right here. It's down in this corner, actually. No, that corner. You will see You'll see me on Facebook. I post a lot of information about different drugs, new drugs, things that are topics of discussion. I will post articles that talk about um, the current events in different states and what's happening. If you, like I said, if you simply need to know where to go with an investigation, you can message me on Facebook. I will respond. And like I said, I believe that's my new mission in life. I didn't sign up for this, believe me. If I would have thought 5 years ago that this would be a career that I would be doing, anything with fentanyl or drugs, I would have never believed it in a million years. I would have never thought that I would be talking about this, let alone about my own child. Um, you don't have to lose a child to advocate against fentanyl. You don't wait until you lose a child to talk about fentanyl. It could be talked about by anybody. And definitely, we need stronger jail sentences. We see people getting community service or ankle monitoring, and they go back and kill. Um, I want to bring out a story in Los Angeles, and I won't cite the exact case, that fentanyl is affecting families. I try to go to a lot of hearings um, that have to do with drug dealers that kill people. And I happened to go to a hearing that had to do with a 17-year-old that passed away by taking what they thought was a Percocet. And I can tell you that the dealer was stopped and questioned and found out that they had various drugs, including fentanyl, baggies. They had a scale. They had lots of money in their car, and they were arrested. But they were also let out. They didn't spend but a day in jail. And in the 17 days before this young person was killed, he was able to get out and continued selling fentanyl. 2 people died, and at least 2 people died as a result of this person's actions. And finally, he was sentenced after 2 years, a couple of years of investigating. He was sentenced to 15 and a half years of time. My question is, why did it take all that? Why did it take all that time and 2 additional lives or more? Because we don't know how many walked off and died. Why did it take that? When it was discovered in the first time, the police and the judge should have done their job to make sure that that person was incarcerated until their hearing, until the issue was resolved, and this person would not have lost their child. It's just baffling to me, why fentanyl is the only thing that's out there that they don't really incarcerate for. There are certain counties that do. I give it to Riverside County. I give it to Placer County. They are doing their utmost to keep it out of their county, to keep the dealers and people who choose to do this out of their county. And if all counties followed suit, fentanyl could be tackled. But there has to be an accountability to it. People need to be held accountable for what they do to other people, whether it's assaulting them, whether it's harming them with a knife or any other weapon, shooting somebody, um, driving under the influence and you kill somebody or injure somebody. All those everybody is held accountable, but when it comes to fentanyl, for some reason, that's not treated like a weapon or um, nothing to be accountable for. And that needs to stop. And it's up to the district attorneys to talk to their law enforcement and work with the law enforcement and help get these dangerous drugs off the street. There may not be a drug law specifically against carfentanil or xylazine, but it should be fentanyl and its analogs or anything that alters the mind that causes death, anything that alters the mind that causes injury, because some people do survive and they are incapacitated. They can't think, they're not the same, because there are survivors and it's not always good. So I want to wrap up this segment and break for station identification, and I will be back for the next segment. We're going to talk about nitazene.
reporting first at 6.
The DEA is sending out an urgent warning about a new form of fentanyl here in San Diego. 10 News reporter Jared Aarons in the live center right now. So, Jared, they're saying it's even more potent and potentially deadlier.
Virginia, it's called carfentanil, and this shows how much more dangerous it is. Take a look at these pictures. This is how much fentanyl it will take to cause a deadly overdose. Just that much on this penny. And over here, this is how much carfentanil will kill you. Just that tiny speck. Drug experts tell me most people may not know they're even taking it.
You've got fentanyl, which is 50 times stronger than heroin, and then you've got carfentanil, which is 100 times stronger than fentanyl.
As the opioid epidemic spreads across San Diego, the DEA is now seeing a new form of the drug. Carfentanil.
We don't know exactly where it's going to show up or when it's going to show up.
2 cases involving carfentanil in San Diego are currently working their way through federal court. Carfentanil overdoses killed 3 people in 2017. Local law enforcement hope they can get the warning out before more people die.
Obviously, carfentanil has no purposes. It's not for human consumption at all. It was created as a tranquilizer for zoo animals like elephants.
The newest trend is to mix it in a pill like these, designed to look like OxyContin or Xanax. That makes it even more dangerous because users don't know what they're really taking or how much.
They're mixing this in a back room, in a bathroom, in a warehouse, and they don't have the quality control issues. You may get a milligram in one pill, 0 fentanyl in one pill or tablet, and one that's going to be heavily laced with it. And you don't know which one you're going to get.
The message has to go out into the community that this is dangerous, that you're playing Russian roulette every time you take that pill.
And the best advice all the people I spoke with have for anyone is don't take any pill that you're not prescribed by a doctor and that isn't made in a medical lab. And they say even though carfentanil has been found in San Diego and is dangerous, they're still really concerned about fentanyl because that overdose has killed 174 people in San Diego in just the last 2 years. In the Live Center, Jared Aarons, 10 News.
That is just such an...
Reporting first at 6.
The DEA.
So we can see how dangerous carfentanil is. I just wanted you to see that video. And they reported 3 deaths. It's very rare. Like I said, 3 deaths. And in Sacramento County, I think when my son passed away, he was the first one in this region to die of carfentanil. So it's something that is I hope it doesn't come on the rise, but there are some parents that have mentioned, and it's just like maybe one other parent that I know that saw carfentanil in their report, in their autopsy report of their child. So please be aware of what is out there. Be aware of carfentanil. It does exist, and that, like the news article said, there's no room for it for human consumption. There's no reason for it to be consumed by a person. It's very, very deadly. And in our next segment, we're going to talk about nitazene. Like I said, let's go ahead and roll the video on nitazene.
Police in Boulder, Colorado are investigating an overdose death they say was caused by a drug 10 times more powerful than fentanyl. The drug called nitazene, nicknamed Frankenstein, was developed back in the 1950s, but the FDA never approved it for consumer use. Kelsey Kernstein is here with more. Kelsey, it's a subclass synthetic, but it's even more potent than regular opioids.
Nick, this really is quite concerning. So this is Alcohol and Drug Foundation saying that this drug is 10 times more potent than fentanyl. It is oftentimes coming from China, and they say that they believe it is sold on the dark web. Now, we spoke to an undercover agent overseeing the case that killed the person in Boulder County, Colorado, and he said it took coroners weeks to figure it out.
Still currently open investigation on that, as well as with the coroner's office doing the toxicology on the decedent. And after having troubles because nothing was showing up on the different type of toxicologies, they sent it to another lab to do an in-depth one, and they were able to find out that it was that nitazene.
Now, this drug that this person died of and what law enforcement are in fact sounding the alarm about is called indethethil. It is a part of a group of drugs called nitazene, or I've also heard it pronounced nitazene. Now, we know that this is a type of opioid, and it was originally created as a substitute for morphine 60 years ago. Now, law enforcement are now saying that people are now illegally purchasing this drug online to consume them themselves or then resell them. Now, investigators are calling distribution of this nitazene more surgical than the widespread network of fentanyl, making it more challenging for officers to crack down on it.
It's a dark web investigation, so somebody can have drugs of any sort mailed to their residence or mailed to their business, right? And then they either take the drugs themselves or they deal in these dangerous drugs, and other people then get unfortunately could be exposed, ingested, and die or have medical complications.
Nick, and the real issue is that investigators say that still so much is not known about this drug, and more is coming to light every single day. Now, there was a prior small study that did show that this new potent drug requires higher doses of overdose reversal drugs than fentanyl, and there is no guarantee of survival.
So we can see nitazene is something that's out there. For some reason, it is not talked about. It's not on the radar of the counties. A lot of people are focusing on fentanyl, as they should be. But there are other dangerous drugs out there that are making it on its way out in the market. Nitazene is, it was developed in the 50s. And one of the reasons why it never marketed, they don't talk about it, is because they did not understand how the addictiveness of it. And it wasn't clear, and so it never made it to market. But what happened is the chemical compound and how they make it, it was still sitting out there. And guess who gets a hold of it? Chemists, people that say, hey, we can take this and we can bring it to life and we can make money. Very cheap to make. And nitazene is finding its way into the market as well. And it's being pressed into pills, just like fentanyl. It's 10 times more potent than fentanyl. And remember, carfentanyl's 100 times more potent. So we're talking about how much Narcan does it take to revive a person? We'll talk about that, because nitazene, like the news article said, it's going to take a lot of reversal drugs. And reversal of Narcan to get a person to become coherent. And not that many people carry that much Narcan. I'm talking about a case of 12, maybe. Who carries that much Narcan? It needs to be talked about, because it is an opioid reversal compound that's out there. Narcan is very valuable. It doesn't always save a life, but it saves many lives. There's no guarantee it's going to work, because there are other drugs out there. So if you feel bad because you gave somebody Narcan and they just weren't responding to it, there's reasons for it. And those two reasons could be a stronger fentanyl, stronger than fentanyl. Fentanyl's pretty straightforward, but still there have been people that had so much fentanyl in their system that it wouldn't have mattered. But the attempt should always be made to revive somebody with Narcan. The attempt should always be tried. And people need to know what's out there. They need to know about xylazine that Narcan does not work with. And you would not know it until, of course, an autopsy is performed on the person, how they died and what they died for. some of these deaths have to go into a deeper investigation as to why they died. They have to send it off to other labs because of these new drugs that are out on the street. We don't know it all. We don't know what's lurking around the corner. We don't know about all the drugs that are out there. Chemists know what they're doing. Dealers know what they're doing. They're aware of what they're giving people. And some people that are the innocent victims have no idea what they're getting. They don't know what they're getting in a pill. They don't know what's been dropped in their drink. They don't know what's been sprinkled on their food as a prank. We have, I talked earlier about somebody that died because of a prank was played on them. And if I didn't talk about it, I'll tell you now that pranksters do not know the depth and how dangerous fentanyl, possibly carfentanil, and nitazene is. You cannot look and sprinkle something on their food thinking it's a prank and watch that person die, and then you realize what you've done. It's too late. People need to man their food at picnics. Please man your food and drinks. Please do that. Some people already do it because of COVID. They do it because they don't want anything flying in their food or anything like that. But be aware that there is also another reason to man your food and drinks. It's because people will drop things in your food and drink to either gain control of you, steal from you, pranking you. It happens. It happens more often than we'd like to believe. There have been a few people that know who did this to their loved one. Some people have no idea who did this to their loved one. And that's why we urge investigations. We are urging police to get serious on this so that it doesn't get out of control, and set an example. You have to be that police officer that's thorough, that investigates, that looks at cell phones, that looks in the pockets of those who pass away, that look to see if there were cameras around at the time of the scene, to see if there was any type of unusual activity just before this person passed away, or even up to an hour before that person passed away. Capturing the critical information in the very beginning and securing an investigation is so important to the success of prosecuting. District attorneys can prosecute, or they can say that they're all for prosecuting fentanyl, but you can't do it without that investigation. And I remind parents, and I always ask them, if you still have your child's cell phone, please keep it secure. Because there's no statute of limitation on homicide. So now you know about nitazene and how it got out onto the streets. Chemists got a hold of the compounds. They recreated the drug. In the 50s, they didn't market it out here to the public because they weren't sure, and they were pretty sure that it was very addictive. So they decided not to market it. Knowing that fact, we know now why chemists have it out on the street, because it is very addictive, but it is very deadly. So in their mind, they're mixing and pressing these drugs, these dangerous compounds, into pills, and they're guessing. They're guessing how much. They're guessing because they're not doctors and these aren't pharmaceutical grade pills, and people are dying. Hollywood has a platform, famous people have a platform, book writers have a platform. Not everybody has a platform to talk about what happened to their loved one. We all know about Robert De Niro. His grandson was killed by fentanyl, and his daughter is devastated. Their family is devastated. They have a platform. And I wish that Hollywood would use their platform as they do in any other thing that they want to talk about fentanyl, to talk about the dangers of carfentanil, to talk about nitazene, to talk about drug use, period. Um, there are some kids that look up to Hollywood icons. They will look to them like they'll do what they do. They want to do what they do. Well, if they start talking about the dangers of drugs and not to do it, I think I think it would make a difference. I think it would make all the difference in the world. However, I'm not a Hollywood icon. I'm not a book writer. I'm not any of those things, but I was given this platform for a reason. And I really do believe that I'm doing my son's mission by talking about this and helping people. That's all he wanted to do in life. He wanted to help people. He would give people the shoes off of his feet. He would give people, in his case, his wallet. He would help people if they needed help. And so I think that by me talking about this and bringing up the subjects that are not very popular, I think that I'm completing my mission, and I won't stop talking about it because there are so many people out there that do not know. They just do not know the dangers. Like I said, last week I talked to a family and they didn't think would have that issue. They thought that because they don't do drugs, their child will never find drugs. It's not true. And they are now educated. I dropped off my computer to a laptop place, and his kids, I remember when they were born, and his kids are now preteen. One's a preteen and one is like 16 or 17 years old. And he remembers my son, and he asked me how I was doing. And one of the things that came out of the conversation was that I had asked him to please talk to your children. And I thought for some reason they were younger, because time flies, about the dangers of drugs. He goes, "Oh, they don't do drugs, and they know not to take things from people. We talk to them all the time." And it wasn't until I told him the story about the gummies that affected 10-year-olds, because I thought he had a 10-year-old for some reason. Um, the light turned on for him as well. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to talk to my kids about sharing lunches. I'm going to talk to my kids about um, candy. I'm going to talk to them about all the things that you just told me." And I spent 20 minutes, very brief, to compact everything into information that he can share with his kids. He did that. And when I went back to pick up my computer, he thanked me for raising the awareness with him. And I can't say it enough, Hollywood needs to talk about it. We see actors that have died, actresses that have died recently from fentanyl poisoning. It's not talked about. They'll have a vigil. It'll be talked about on Instagram because they're famous. But the awareness just isn't there to carry on that awareness of caution, to people that are living, and so that it doesn't keep happening. They just don't talk about it, and they need to continue talking about it so that more people don't fall victim to it. So that is going to be it for my segment this Saturday. Next Saturday, I will have Stephanie Boatwright with me, and she's going to be talking about her son that passed away from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 20 years old. And she will be joining me and talking about her son and her journey. And I can't wait for that for next week. So stay tuned. Join me every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It is going to be 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be here every Saturday talking about a new subject, talking about fentanyl awareness and everything that's important to you. Thank you for joining us.